All right. Welcome into Toilets to Titles, episode number 25. I had to look at the sheet here to make sure I was on correctly. We are week number 7. We are almost halfway through the fantasy football season. That is very, very incredible to imagine, and we really haven't had too many hiccups. I'm going to knock on some wood and hope that I don't jinx it, but things have been going well. With me tonight is my co-host, who's always with me, my main man at Justin FF_Justin. What's cooking?
Hey, John, I'm feeling pretty good today. I kind of had a pre-show show today, so I was able to get a guest spot on the Sleeper Wire show with our friend of the show, George. That is BFTG Pod, or at BFTG Pod for his Twitter handle. Appreciate him letting me come on and talk waivers for this week. Ironically enough, between the two shows and trying to get some sleep for work tomorrow, I don't know that I'm even going to have time to put in my own waivers for my own teams tonight. But it was a lot of fun to talk waivers. That's not something that we typically do on our show, and he knew that wasn't a specialty of mine, so he was very gracious and patient with me. So it was nice.
Maybe if you can get me that link. What I can do is I could post it in the show notes at fusionffb.com every week after we record. All of our show notes, dudes and duds, everything is on there. So you can go and check it out while you're setting the lineup. Also, there's a link to our YouTube stream that you can go back and watch. I'll post the link to the episode that Justin was on, and it'll release. I'll post that article tonight so that you guys can go and look at it before you make those waiver claims. You talked about not getting sleep. There's a guy who's probably not getting – well, he's been getting sleep because he's been staying in a hotel for work, but tonight he's not going to sleep, and that's my man Nate at Nate_Dirt19. Nate can't make it tonight. He's been away from his family for a few days on work. Tonight his family came to visit him, so we told him don't worry about it. You guys can follow me on Twitter at eCoachSchepps. I do want you to know how you can listen to us. Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Periscope, Spotify, and the YouTube channel. Please make sure to hit the like button on the YouTube videos. Subscribe if you can. That'd be very helpful. If you're listening on Podbean, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or anything else, if you don't mind, checking out our YouTube channel, hitting the subscribe button, going and hitting a few like buttons on some of the episodes. And we are going to take notice when we're filling up the Frankenstank leagues next year. We're trying to expand to 3. So if you give us a 5-star review, we're going to give away an entry to next year's Frankenstank league. What is the other division? What do we come up with the name with it as? Was it Phantom? Was it the Phantom one or the Creature from which one?
Well, it's going to be one of those two. I hope it's both of them though. Man, I forget the Phantom of the the Creature from the Staff Bathroom.
Yeah, that was it. There was the Phantom one. We have another one too that's pretty good, but I don't have it in my notes and I don't want to botch it. But it is it's pretty good. And you know what? We have a guest on this evening, and maybe he'll want to join the Frankenstank. We're gonna have to give him some notes about it so he can kind of see what it's all about. But that is let's bring him in. We got Kyle August, formerly of the Fantasy Football Fellas, new host of the Fantasy Football Smackdown. That's at Kyle FF Fellas, and we'll also share his podcast is at FFSmackdownPod. Kyle, what's happening?
Boys, thanks for having me. Chef's good to talk with you, man. It's been a minute. I'm still licking my wounds after that Cowboys game. I knew it wasn't going to be good, but it was worse than expected. But I'm looking forward to just hanging out and talking football with you guys tonight.
Me and Kyle, we go back when I first started podcasting and writing. I wrote for the Dynasty Football Factory, and I eventually took on their first podcast. And Kyle was gracious enough to bring me on, him and Seth, to kind of get the word out, because at the time you guys had a following and we didn't. So you brought me on, you gave me a chance to talk, and you gave me a chance to talk about my podcast that was coming out. So I really appreciate that, and I'll always remember that, man. That was great.
Yeah, dude, we've met some really cool people over the years. Seth and I started the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast back. We did 4 years of that, wrapped up this summer. Seth just really busy with things and had to kind of take a step back from the fantasy world. As we know, you can pump a lot into this thing and it can take a lot out of you. But we've met some really cool people. And anytime I can help anybody out along the way, it's always been, a positive experience. Cause honestly, like you just see a lot of people out there who just really enjoy this game, really want to, help people out and just kind of get their name out there a little bit too. So man, it was fun. We do go way back. We've kind of, had many different steps along the way since then, but I was pumped to see your message for the invite to jump on with you guys here.
Yeah, man, we kind of reconnected. You kind of like I kind of started doing my own thing and getting things going, stepped away for a bit, stepped back in. And then we kind of reconnected because we both ended up in the same league.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's a listener league or whatever, but we both ended up being in it. And I was like, oh, man, that's Kyle. Yep. And I reached out to you, and it's great to reconnect. Now, I know you're hosting the Fantasy Football Smackdown pod. How long has that been going? When do you guys record? When do you release your episodes? Tell us some info about that.
Sure. So I started. We actually turned the page on the Fellas podcast. My former co-host Seth, like I said, took a step back shortly after the draft. So I still really have a passion, obviously for fantasy football, but a passion for podcasting. And I really just wanted to use the show as an opportunity to continue to meet new people, in the industry while providing help to anyone that still wanted to hang out and listen to just me. So through the summer, had different guests on every week, talk some football, kind of just talk some life, try to get to know some people. I was kind of approaching it as, letting, people that are so plugged into fantasy Twitter, like get to know the person behind the name, behind the avatar. Right. So had some fun with that over the summer. It was obviously a great time to do it because there wasn't much football to talk about. So I took advantage of that opportunity. And then, obviously draft season started up and it was pumping out multiple episodes a week, and in season, man, just, grinding it out, doing a waiver wire show that drops every Tuesday early in the morning. It's like 15, 20 minutes. It's just a solo podcast, just with me, just running through the names that you guys need to know, quick to the point. There's tons of other shows out there that help you out with, more and more detail, but 15, 20 minutes, just jumping through that. And then, been doing a Friday show with a start sit, just kind of covering some of our favorite starts, fades of the week. That's kind of taken a different form over the last couple weeks with kind of different co-hosts, mix and matching. But for now, man, just enjoying it, having fun. And so those drop every Tuesday morning, every Friday morning. And again, like you said, at FFSmackdownPod on Twitter. And my Twitter handle, I'm too lazy to change it apparently, but at Kyle FF Fellas. I don't have any cool nickname or anything, so I just kept the fellas part in there.
Man, it stinks about when you so when I was the host of the Dynasty Warzone, I kind of ran that Twitter account and started it with like 15 followers and spent a whole bunch of time answering questions and trying to build up, the following, and got over a few thousand, and then having to kind of give that up and go to a new Twitter handle. And then, I had Sliz Digital, and I kind of wanted – that was affiliated with the show, and I kind of wanted to go in my own direction. And, I didn't want to piggyback off of my old stuff or the old website. I kind of wanted to start from the ground up. Mm-hmm. And it's been hard, man. I haven't – like I used to have like 2,500 or 3,000 followers for at Sliz Digital, and then I used to have like 3,000 or 4,000 for Dynasty Warzone. Because I remember there was a time when you reached out to us. We passed you in followers just because – you had more downloads, but just because I was kind of just.
No, you're grinding for sure.
It's been very hard to try to get back up there, man. So I suggest you keep your Twitter handle.
Yeah, it was definitely. I remember I forgot about Sliz. I forgot about Sliz Digital. I remember we asked you about that back in the day because we always loved the different Twitter handles and stuff, but. Yeah, man, it's different, doing the even rebranding. Like I was able to keep the podcast feed, which was a huge deal, because it was still just me just doing our own thing. I know you've gone through the rebrand and things and starting from complete scratch, man, it's super, super tough. So whenever I see new shows like you guys, popping onto the scene and stuff like that, man, I definitely, mad respect to anybody that does this, because at the end of the day, we all just love this game. We all love Dynasty. We all love fantasy football. And man, it is not easy. Even this year, as I've tried to approach this with like, hey man, I want this to be fun. I want this to be something I can continue to do, but I'm a one-man operation now, right? Like I need to keep it, sustainable. Even that, man, I'm like, man, I'm still having to, there's just so much that, if you want to be able to do it right. So that's why I love seeing new shows too. And people jumping into here because it is a blast.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, as a listener to the Smackdown, I do got to say, like, that was one thing I was going to tell you after we started going live here, is that I really appreciate those episodes that are real quick and to the point. And it's like, I guess we're busy, like we're on with our own shows, and then we're also trying to guest on other shows, and we got a lot going on with our own teams. So that those episodes where it's just boom, 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 like it flies by. I can get the whole episode in. I get a lot of information from a totally different perspective. But then on the other end, when I do have a little bit more time and I'm on a long drive and I can listen to the other episodes where you have guests on, talk out, get to know each other, then it's like, now you guys are riding in the car with me. So you guys do a great job, or you do a great job of that flow. So I just want to say that's why I'm going to keep listening to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Share those links with me for this week's episode. And I'll also, not that we get a lot of viewers on the article where we post our notes, but I will share it, just so people who are listening can go check it, because it's very important being able to release that Tuesday morning episode, telling everybody who they can pick up. We're kind of behind the eight ball because we record Tuesday night and we release when I actually started releasing it Tuesday night after we record, just so that if there are anybody that really wants to get those waiver claims in, we'll get it for them. But the fact that you're releasing it Tuesday morning is awesome. So now I also see you're a ranker and contributor at Fantasy Pros. How long you been doing that?
Yeah, been working with them for a couple of years. They have a lot of writers over there. They have a good group heading that operation over there. It's been fun. I kind of just got connected through somebody that I knew. So every time they throw out, usually in season stuff is a little bit harder to come by over there, but in the off season, I've been writing for them at least a couple articles every month. And it's good. I mean, it's good exposure. I got people that, as you guys know, kind of your buddies that are kind of like just casual or whatever. And, it was really cool when, one of them's like, hey, I'm on this site and you're on here. I'm like, yeah, but, it's just a lot of fun. I've been with them for a couple of years, and they offer a lot of great, tools for people in the industry, as far as ranking and things like that. So I was lucky enough to get in and on their ranking platform, and it makes my life a hell of a lot easier as well, putting those rankings together every week, but also just a really, cool spot. And obviously they have a pretty good reputation over there as well. So just, it's been a couple of years, but it's been fun.
Me and Justin took our shot at rankings this year, and our rankings are over also at fusionffb.com. We started, I think Justin, when would you say that we started putting our rankings together?
Oh, I mean, probably about 2 months before the season started, but it was like every week or two we would bring it back up and say, hey, we need to adjust this, we need to adjust that, and we finalized them the Wednesday night before the third kickoff. So
it was like 2 months of preparation for rankings that we finalized the week before the season. So next year we're gonna have to be a little more steadfast on that, so that we can actually get the rankings out there before people are drafting. But the way we did it is we got our rankings ready before the season, so that during the season and after the season, we can go back and see how we did, not necessarily to help people draft, just to see how close we were. Sure. And you also, you write for Ball Blast Fantasy Football. So you got some articles you're putting up on there as well?
Yeah, so that's what I've been writing for in season. They merged with Red Shirts Fantasy Football, who I was with last year. You've been following me at all on Twitter. Obviously, I've been doing the podcast and stuff for 4 or 5 years now. But I've been writing this article as well that drops every Saturday called Waiver Wire Sniping. And that comes out over at Ball Blast. And pretty much, there's a few similar things out there these days, but this is something I've been doing for a while. It's an article that pretty much just covers all the people that you should pick up in your leagues ahead of kickoff that week, in essence, to get a jump on the waiver wire for the next week. So what player can you stash on the end of your bench that's going to be, because as you guys know, you're plugged into Twitter and all this stuff. All these names are plastered all over every article, waiver wire, podcast, they're everywhere, right? And you're going to have to spend up for them. So what I do with waiver wire sniping is I just look 1 week ahead, or looking for some stash players that hey, man, you might want to go out and grab this guy right now before he hits, because everyone's going to be trying to grab him. And in most leagues, especially in redraft, is that you can pick up a player, on Saturday, drop somebody off the end of your bench. Not going to cost you anything. Just see how the week plays out, and maybe you got the jump on the rest of your league. So that drops every Saturday right now, covers streaming options, quarterback, DST, tight end, and then some stash candidates at running back and wide receiver. And, it's always fun when, everyone else is looking around and that player's already on your roster, right? And you're like, okay, good, I can go focus on something else. Or, we got a heavy bye week and a lot of people are looking for quarterbacks and you already have the best streamer on your team. So that one's a ton of fun. And I just feel like it's something that doesn't get a ton of focus and can still give you an edge, which is really hard to find these days in fantasy football because there's just so much stuff out there.
So you'll be able to help out a lot when we talk about our streamers and our turtleheads.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we call them turtleheads, players that are not necessarily streamers, just those guys that are going to break out. We had to keep it with the toilet humor,
I like it. I do like that.
Good. I'm glad you enjoy it. We've kind of been like, you should see our background conversations where we like come up with segment names and like our podcast names. Like the league that we do is called the Frankenstein League. Right now it's one division, 12 teams, half podcast hosts. Jernigan's in it, so next year we're going to do 2 or 3 other ones. And we want to keep it to like the Universal Monster theme. So we got Frankenstein. We got a creature from the staff bathroom. That's what's going to be one next year. And then there's a phantom one that we thought of that's very good, but we just kind of throw them out there. These little toilet puns and stuff. Yeah. It's been very fun. We try not to go overboard. Every now and then, someone goes a little overboard. But
oh man, at least you're not throwing anyone to the bus. That's good. Yeah. That's good of you.
Well, if they're listening at home, they don't.
Almost all of my humor is bathroom humor. So he tries to edit me, and I don't know what to do after that. Like I always want to be quiet.
George Reed just commented in the YouTube chat that he's the worst team in the league.
Oh, nice. Hey, man. Every league's got to have one,
Well, you can. I don't know if you can steal every victory. You can steal from their starting lineup, and you have to give someone from your starting lineup, and but you can only steal a certain amount of players from each position because you're like trying to build a monster. So you can't steal like 4 quarterbacks over 5 games because you only need X amount of quarterbacks. So it's pretty interesting. So you can also trade, and I reached out to George today, and I think he told me he has nothing to trade. So
I may or may not have I may or may not be in a league with Jernigan, who may or may not be bragging about how good he's doing in that league. So
he's doing well.
I'll just throw that out there.
Jernigan's doing well, and he's doing so well. He's already trying to plan a Disney trip with his winnings. So
dang, okay, look at this guy. He's got some connections there, so that's good.
Yeah, exactly. Bingo. All right, guys. Fantasy Cares, I do want to discuss real quick. Every 50 followers this season will be donating $10 to a charity of our choosing for Fantasy Cares. I believe we chose the Tim Tebow Foundation, which supports stopping human trafficking. We're currently at $90. We just hit $639. So we're actually at $641. So our next target is $689, and then we'll be at $100. So we are, I think, about 48 away. So if you're just listening to the show and you're on Twitter, go and give us a follow at Twits to Titles. Help us help somebody. All right, gentlemen, without further ado, it is Tua time. So the Dolphins are 3-3. I picked them preseason to win the division, and I also picked them, to go over 5 games. So I'm pretty certain they're going to win more than 5 games. But Fitz was looking good. So how do you guys feel? Do they get better or worse with Tua? Justin, why don't you let us know? What are your thoughts on Tua?
So I think with Tua, you get a guy that's going to be a little bit more conservative. I don't think he's going to throw the ball down the field near as much as Fitz does. So you're not going to have that excitement or those huge plays. But I also think that he's a little bit more accurate. I said in the offseason that I felt that Tua was the most NFL-ready quarterback in this year's draft, and I believe that even with the bad hip. Like once he was ready to go, I was ready to see him play. So I do think that in the long run, he does help the team. You kind of hate to see it because everybody loves Fitz, but at the same time, they're 3-3 right now. As good as he's playing out of his mind, and we see the fantasy side of it, so it looks even better than it really probably is for the real life football team. But that 3-3, and that team, the makeup, they're just too young. It's not like they're going to win the Super Bowl this year anyway. So we all kind of saw this, and they said all along that it was a plan in their mind to start Tua. Most people thought it was going to be after the bye week. And George made a nice point when I was on his show earlier that that bye week was originally supposed to be much later in between the two Jets games. And then with the COVID changing up the schedules and everything, their bye week came much earlier. So it's just like they just kind of changed it up, and now they're just doing it a little bit earlier. But I do want to mention in all this mess that one of our listeners, a buddy of mine, Doug, at 03 Dougie T23, says that he has a hunch that they're going to try to trade Fitzpatrick to Dallas or the Jets before the deadline. I'm not so sure I like the Jets call, just because, they already have Darnold, they've got Flacco, and they're already trying to get Lawrence from what I can tell. So Fitz might actually make that team where they could win a game or two, and I don't know that they want that. So, but I like the Dallas call. So I wanted to give them some props because it's not an angle that I had considered. I just kind of assumed they would want to leave Fitz on to kind of, bring Tua along, but it's an interesting idea, especially for you Cowboys fans in the room.
Kyle, what do you think about Tua possibly Tua taking over and Fitz being sat, and then also what are your thoughts on Fitz to Dallas?
Yeah, from a fantasy perspective, man, I was a little bit disappointed we didn't get a few more games out of Fitzpatrick. He'd been playing lights out, obviously, like was mentioned here, but I think this is obviously what the Dolphins need to do. This is a good plan for them. They're not going anywhere, like Justin said. And that's a bold call as far as winning the division. I think, and obviously, man, they're playing better than expected. They picked up that win against the Niners, which was big. But from a fantasy perspective, you're losing a guy that was a streamer for you anyway. If he's in a super flex league, you picked him up as your QB3. Hopefully, maybe you already had a quarterback that had their bye week already, so maybe he covered you on 1 week. Obviously Dolphins are heading to a bye now. If you're a dynasty owner and you picked him up maybe if you picked him up in a startup, maybe here's your QB3, obviously, or something like that. Now you're cashing in on, having a startable quarterback a little bit earlier. I think this, as far as, over the next couple weeks, could see a little bit of a downgrade for Parker. It's been a little bit inconsistent in that offense anyway. Parker's been okay. He's been a little bit banged up. Preston Williams, who I really like from a dynasty perspective, he's kind of up and down, doesn't really get a ton of volume anyway, even with Fitz. And then Gesicki, who is a tight end I really liked heading into the season, he's kind of had his moments, but he's kind of just your run-of-the-mill tight end right now. So I think that the arrow could definitely be pointing up on all of these guys from even a redraft perspective within the next couple weeks. From a dynasty perspective, obviously you're going to see what this team's going to look like heading into the future. They're definitely going to be adding some offensive weapons, I would assume, around Tua, but I'm excited to see him play. It's just as selfishly as a fantasy owner, I had Fitz in some super flex leagues as my QB3 and was feeling pretty damn good about that. But as far as to Dallas, man, I think that they know where they're at. They signed Dalton, which was a smart move. Pretty much cost them $1 million to upgrade from someone that's never played an NFL game to Andy Dalton. Yeah, they're in the thick of it, so that might lead to them wanting to maybe add a free agent or do something to maybe push them over and finish 6-10 and win the division. But I don't really necessarily see them adding Fitzpatrick. I think he's kind of just there in Miami. He'll continue to mentor Tua. There's a lot of good reports coming out, but I'm excited to see the kid play, man. And he's gonna get Aaron Donald staring down at him in week 8. So that's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Now, I don't really want to go too much further into Tua and Fitz, but as far as Dallas goes, I think Jerry and Steven, I think they're too I don't know what the word is, but I think they want everyone to think they're smart with what they did with Dalton. And I think bringing in Fitz would be going against that. I think Dalton was a good signing. I think he was cheap, like you said. And I think they're going to give Dalton every single chance to work, just because this is exactly what they got him for. I do know this weekend I was watching the game with my friend, and I don't know if you know who Ben DiNucci is. I'm sure you do, Kyle. He's the backup. Mike McCarthy got him. He's kind of a mobile quarterback. Not many people know about him. He's a rookie, but I looked at him on the sidelines, and he looked so nervous. I looked at his face, and I went to my buddy, this guy does not want to go in the game. He is not ready. Here he is being behind Dalton and Dak, thinking he's going to have a year or two to get ready under Mike McCarthy, who's supposedly a QB guru, and then maybe, go somewhere after free agency in 3 or 4 years. And now he's on the sideline in Dallas an injury away from having to go in there, and he just looked like, man, he looked like a deer in headlights. His hands were on his, his shoulder pads, like he was. But man, what I could see Dallas doing, I was telling Nate, I think Justin might have seen it the other day. I really thought they were going to make Michael Gallup a focal point this past weekend so they could try to get him a bunch of touches and kind of showcase him, because I think they're going to try to trade him. I really do think they'll try to trade him. I think they're going to be looking for a defender. I've heard Quinnen Williams, forget who the other defender is. Oh, Justin Simmons from Denver. I've kind of heard that. I don't think from any big time sources, but they need defense. They don't need a linebacker right now. They got Van Der Esch back, and Sean Lee might be coming back, but where they really need help is free safety and defensive line, because their defensive line is just not getting to the quarterback. So I think if anything, they're going to go for a D lineman or they're going to go for a safety. Jump in real quick. BRXNSYN wants to know, should I even trade for Darren Waller if I have Jonnu Smith? Is it an upgrade? Well, tell me what the status of Jonnu Smith is before we make that decision. If Jonnu Smith is healthy, it depends on what I need to sell. Like, what do I need to give with Jonnu Smith? Is Darren Waller an upgrade to Jonnu Smith this year? Yes, I think so. Am I saying he's a significant upgrade? No, but he is an upgrade. If I'm giving Jonnu Smith and like Christian Kirk, that's fine. Give me Darren Waller. But if he wants Jonnu Smith and CeeDee Lamb or a player like that, I don't want to do it. But do you guys have an opinion on this matter?
I'll take it. I mean, I think, it is an upgrade. I'm not necessarily, like you said, Sheps, I'm not going to pay over the top for it. The good thing, and everybody should note this on any trade they're making, especially like in redraft leagues, or even if you're in a position where you're trying to make a push in a dynasty league, like both of these players, Jonnu Smith, Darren Waller, they're already through their bye week, right? We have the injury question with Jonnu Smith, but always consider that too. Like, if you're going to buy Darren Waller right now, it's a pretty good time. The goldfish mentality, he didn't play last week, so no one remembers who Darren Waller is. They're already through their bye week, which is great. So, if you needed to add Darren Waller to a contending squad, you're going to be in good shape. But yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you, Sheps.
Yeah, if you have to give up too much to get him, then keep in mind that Jonnu's injury, from what I'm understanding, it isn't all that serious. But if he does have to miss, it's a 1:00 game. So you have plenty of time to go pick up another tight end. And the way that the tight end landscape is, just about every tight end on the free agent market is about the same. But maybe you go ahead and pick up the Ferksker, his or however you pronounce that last name, his backup that came in and scored like 20 points this week. So
his first name's Anthony, so that'd probably be the good way to,
There you go.
He was tight end one.
Pick up that guy Anthony. The other tight end they got.
Tony.
Then if Jonnu doesn't play, you can throw him in.
He had 93 yards and a touchdown?
Yeah, I think he was tight end one on the week from what you see all these like the all-star teams that these like publications put out like each week on, Instagram or Twitter. But all they're doing is just searching by whoever scored the most and putting him on there. Like, okay, thank you. Now I get to stare at this guy for 4 days. So
Anthony Ferksker. All right. So we covered that. Now let's go on to some injury news. Let's start with Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders, knee injury, predictable. Missed at least week 7. Boston Scott to start. I don't think this will be the last injury of the season for Miles Sanders. I think minor injuries is going to just be kind of how he rolls. I think he's going to be a 12-game-a-year guy. What do you guys think about Miles Sanders and Boston Scott for the week? Kyle, why don't you go, man?
Yeah, I think, we've seen it before. We know Corey Clement wasn't on the team last year, but Boston Scott, when he got the opportunity, he put up big numbers right at the end of last season. So he's going to be out there probably on some waiver wires. Obviously, he's going to be a hot pickup for this week. So you're going to get, you guys too, like you're going to get a lot of questions like this guy or Boston Scott, this guy or Boston Scott. Like we're all going to be sick of the name Boston Scott by the end of the week. But luckily they play on Thursday, so we only got to hear about him for a few days. But they got a great matchup against the Giants. He's a guy that he's just outside my top 24 for the week. I think he's somebody you can plug in the flex. When you're looking at, whether you should invest in Boston Scott, when you're the Miles Sanders owner, what you need to give up to maybe potentially replace him, you got to look at, as always, look at the schedule. Philly's got the Giants this week on a short week. We know Sanders is out. Then they got Dallas the following week. That's probably a winnable game, whether Sanders is in the lineup or not. Then they're heading into a bye week. So just like when we looked at Dalvin Cook last week, like there was no reason to rush him. You could easily give him 2 weeks off with only missing one game. I think that's how the Eagles might handle this with Sanders. He's going to get 10 days off in between that Giants and Dallas game. So they'll obviously be careful with him. But Boston Scott, flex worthy for this week for sure, and in week 8, if needed.
Yes, I agree with that. He's definitely flex worthy. You might want to temper any kind of expectation based on last year, though, just because this year it is an ugly team. That offensive line is completely gone. Like I think I heard earlier today that Wentz and their center are the only two started week 1 that are still starting this week. So it's ugly. So that offense is just really bad. There's no other real options. The problem with Scott is that he makes a really good complementary piece to a team when he's needed, but he's used to being the complementary piece, and now he needs complementary pieces. So I don't have high expectations for him. But if you're desperate for a flex with the way running backs are with all the injuries, you don't have any other options.
Is Travis Fulgham for real?
For this week.
I mean, he's done it. He's done it 2 weeks in a row now, right?
Yeah. I feel he's definitely start worthy now. I mean, if you don't believe it, first off, he's not on your team by now because somebody else already bought in early on him. I think he's definitely over the next couple weeks for sure. I want to see, how if something called Deshaun Jackson ever shows up on the field again, something else called Alshon Jeffrey. I don't know.
I think it's Jalen Reagor, man. I think the days of it D-Jax and Alshon are done. I think it's Jalen Reagor who's really the one there, or at least the guy who's supposed to be.
Sure. I think you got it for at least the next 2 weeks with Fulgham, and then after that, he's not a stretch run player. So if you're a team that you're set up for success in making the fantasy playoffs, shove this guy off onto somebody else's team that's 3-3.
I think one thing that Fulgham has done is he's helped prove to us that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is not the thing, because all those high expectations that we had of J.J. coming into the season, and then now they need a guy to step up, and it's this Fulgham character. So
that was my favorite stat line of week 6. The dude had 8 fantasy points, didn't even register a catch.
Yeah, or a single yard.
Love it.
All right, so we touched on Jonnu Smith, the sprained ankle. We're not sure if he's going to play, so I'm really not going to touch on that too much more. Devontae Parker has the groin injury. He's not believed to be serious, but they have a bye week, so we really don't need to touch on that too much. Mark Ingram, ankle sprain. This could, but now Harbaugh is saying that it doesn't think it's major, and he expects him back. And do they have a bye as well? Yes, Baltimore has a bye. So they're another team with a bye. So I think Edwards, he got into the end zone. I don't know why he doesn't get more touches because he looks explosive. I really think Edwards, could be an RB1 if he got the opportunity. But the thing is, they do have that 3-headed monster. Joe Mixon has a foot injury. He's cleared to come back at the end of the Colts game, but they felt Bernard was needed in 2-minute offense. They have Cleveland in week 7, Tennessee week 8, and bye week 9. So what do you guys have to say about Joe Mixon?
Mixon had that monsters game, which, then we all forget about how much he was, not putting up numbers the previous weeks. I do like the fact that he's been more involved with the passing game. That's something that he has not done over the course of his career until over the last couple weeks with Joe Burrow. So I think Mixon is somebody that is always getting a lot of hype because we do agree that he's talented, but his situation has always been bad around him. So I think he's a high-end RB2. I'll continue to use him as such on all my teams and feel good about it. If you need Gio Bernard, he's out there in every league. So, even if you're not the Mixon owner, you go stash him just in case, because he's the only really guy there that has much experience that you'd count for fantasy. But I think it's kind of the same story on Joe Mixon. If there's somebody else in your league who loves Joe Mixon as an RB1, you trade Joe Mixon to him and make him pay that price. But otherwise,
wait for the offseason when the hype rises again, and then you move on from them.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, Justin, you're comfortable with that? That's good. Mixon
and you drafted him as a low-end RB1, high-end RB2, and that's pretty much what you're getting. And with the opportunity, especially, he's still at least going to have the chance to be that every week. So I'm completely okay with it.
All right, so Mostert, he went down again. He's another guy who just can't stay healthy for 16, but boy, does he look good when he's on the field. A high ankle sprain, so that's a little more severe. Who knows? That could be 4 games or, Either that could be 6 games, or if he's a freak of nature, it could be 2. It's hard to say. McKinnon is to start, but who is JaMycal Hasty? He looks a little interesting. He might be the sneaky pickup this week. He could be the guy seeing some more touches and actually benefiting, because you never know with Shanahan which running back he's going to go to. I thought it was Jeffrey Wilson when Mostert got hurt earlier in the year. He did okay the first week he started, but then the next week didn't really do too hot. So I'm thinking it's JaMycal Hasty. Justin, what do you think about the Raheem Mostert situation in San Francisco?
Pretty much just that. I think McKinnon's going to get the start, and McKinnon's going to be serviceable and decent. And I think Jeffrey's still a little banged up, but also Tevin Coleman should be coming back really soon from his injuries as well. He had a sprained knee. He was out for the last 3 weeks, I think, maybe 4. They're looking for him to come back potentially in the next 2, maybe 3 weeks. So if this is a long-term thing, and I'm hearing that sprain, high ankle sprain, most is pretty severe. So last I heard, it's going to be about at least 4 to 6 weeks, and they're going to probably put him on the IR for a little bit and shelf him, which is the best thing to do. So yeah, you're going to see McKinnon become a thing, and then also, like I said, if Coleman can get back on the field soon, he'll be your third down back, and I think that kind of hampers what we're hoping to see from Hastings in one day.
All right, now we got Zach Ertz has an ankle sprain. It's unclear how serious that is. Goddard may be off the IR. I haven't really heard too much about Goddard. I'm hoping he's off soon because I have a lot of Goddard. But Richard Rodgers is the next man up. Curtis Samuel went down with a knee injury. He was an unexpected last-minute scratch before kickoff, so I'd keep an eye on that. A few more injury things before we move on. Christian McCaffrey could return this week. He's probable for week 8. Next 2 games are much-needed divisional games, so they might bring him back here. Dalvin Cook was only missing 1 week to begin with, but he has a bye week 7. He'll be ready for week 8. And Noah Fant could be back this week. I was hoping he'd be back last week, because I also have a lot of him as well. If he's not back this week, it's very likely he'll be back week 8. So let's move on to our games of the week. Kyle, why don't you start? All right, I see you got a 4 o'clock game here that you're looking forward to. Which one is that?
First off, when I was looking at the schedule, I was glad to see that there weren't just 2 4 o'clock games, because my God, what are we doing? You know, so there's a couple good ones. We got Patty Mahomes going in that 4 o'clock time frame, and my game of the week is Seattle at Arizona. This is a huge game for the NFC West. Arizona coming off of a victory, I guess, on Monday Night Football against the Cowboys. A get right game for them. Definitely that offense was clicking. Everybody got theirs. Seahawks are coming off of a bye. This one's going to be in Arizona, and this is a huge one for the division. Obviously, Seattle's undefeated. Arizona's 4-2. The Rams are 4-2 after beating on the East. So what team are they? I think if the Cardinals want to establish themselves as a true contender in this division, they got to go out and win this game. Obviously, having the tiebreaker for Seattle, it would be potentially huge on the head-to-head matchup. But, man, I was looking at this for, when I was trying to look at some players coming out back off the bye, what do these schedules look like? I mean, you look at the Seattle schedule down the stretch, man. I mentioned the Rams are beating up on the NFC East. The Seahawks have only played the Cowboys. So, like, the down the stretch schedule, they get Arizona again in week 11. That's going to be at home. And then they play the Eagles, the Giants, the Jets, the Redskins. I mean, if the Cardinals lose this game, they can pretty much just kiss the division goodbye, and they're playing for the wild card. So I think this is going to be a great game for fantasy. I think there's going to be a lot of fantasy points being put up in this one. I think D-Hop is going to show the world that he is still the wide receiver 1 in the league, not DK Metcalf. I'm a little salty about that. Yeah. So I think this is going to be a fun game to watch, and fantasy owners should be licking their chops, because if you're chasing points heading into 4 o'clock slate and you got almost anybody in this game, I think you're going to be in good shape.
Well, look at Greg chiming in here with Falcons over the Cowboys. Well, I can't say we're very far apart. No. At this point, we are closer than we are far apart. So I don't even know if it matters which one of the teams are better, because we both stink.
We won that game. We won that one game. Remember?
Man, what an awful game. Matt Ryan, I have him in a lot of Superflex leagues, and he's been killing me. I benched him this past week, and he goes off. But anyway, if you, I don't know if anybody saw. The Cardinals media posted a pretty cool picture prior to the Cowboys Cardinals game. If you get a chance, go back and look at Cardinals Twitter. It was like homage to Stranger Things. It had the Cowboys Stadium with that the thing from season 2, Stranger Things, above the stadium, and it was like red and black. And it had Kyler Murray, I think Larry Fitzgerald, and a few other guys on bicycles, like outside the stadium, like in their jerseys. It was pretty sweet, and it kind of was done like it was pretty good graphics. So,
Cool.
Justin, what is your game of the week?
I went for the Bucks and the Raiders Sunday Night Football because you know me, I like the flair, I like the big plays. I mean, I do consider fantasy a little bit when I'm talking game of the week, but I'm looking for potential teams that are going to be in the playoffs here. And with 7 teams in each conference in the playoffs, I think both of these teams are likely going to be in, because the Raiders show flashes. Like, they play to their opponents. When they have tougher opponents, they play really good. And the Bucks have really been picking up the pace the last few weeks. And I'm really interested to see if Henry Ruggs is going to be a consistent thing and not just a big boom play here and there kind of guy. Because I'm rooting for the guy. I really want him to be a permanent, every single week must start kind of guy, kind of like the way that DK Metcalf eventually has become. So, I'm really looking forward to that matchup. And then, of course, with the Bucks, the whole running game situation for me is extremely important for fantasy purposes, because Leonard Fournette, I mean, I don't know how long this guy's going to be hurt, but he's missing some prime matchups during this stretch that he's hurt. And Rojo's taking advantage of it, man. Rojo's actually been playing really well, and that's going to make it hard for him to come back and take the snaps that a lot of us anticipated on him taking. So he's going to have to get back, and this isn't a bad matchup as far as that goes, especially if the Bucks can get off to an early lead.
I like that game. I like that Raiders passing attack. I think, they don't really have an alpha yet, but they have a bunch of guys who get the job done. I think like every option that Carr has to throw to, is pretty good in their own right. And I think they're definitely they're kind of establishing themselves as a solid squad. So I think Raiders Bucks is going to be an interesting game. And look at that Bucks defense. That Bucks defense is one of the best in the NFL. They beat the piss out of Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I think they held Aaron Jones to like 27 yards. So I just saw that Greg chimed in with they have a quarterback, the Falcons. They might have a different quarterback if they keep losing games after this season.
I didn't realize it was G. I didn't realize that's who it was until you put it up here. Yeah, no. All right, that makes more sense. Why I was wondering, like, what Falcons fan could honestly have the gall to be talking smack about anything right now? But that makes more sense.
All right, so now my game of the week is a COVID makeup. It's Steelers at the Titans. I had this as my game of the week when they were originally supposed to play, and now I think it's even more juicy. I think this is going to be like a good old-fashioned slobber knocker. I think it's going to be more defensive than offensive, and that's not something we're used to seeing. And watch, just because I say this, that's going to be like it's going to be like 35-40. But I could see this being like 14-17, 17-21. I think it's going to be every possession is going to count. I think it's going to be, field position battles. I think it's going to be punching each other in the mouth, and I think we're going to get to see, who can prosper. Yeah, slobber knocker. I said slobber knocker. We're going to see does Tannehill or does Roethlisberger? Who's got it? You know what I mean? And whose defense is really better? Is it the Titans or the Steelers? Because both those defenses are playing very well right now. So I think, and that game's at 1 p.m. So we got a 1 p.m. game for you with Steelers Titans. We got a 4 p.m. game with you, Seahawks Cardinals, and then Sunday Night Football Bucks Raiders. So we covered it all. Justin, before we move on, why don't you give a little Thrive promotion here?
All right, I'm gonna make this one kind of quick. We're a little behind, but
yes.
But don't forget the Thrive Fantasy Football app. It's kind of like daily fantasy, but more like the sportsbook side of your daily fan side. But they mix it with the idea of daily fantasy, where you're still betting on players, but you're betting on their specific performance, like over under 1.5 touchdowns for Melvin Gordon or whatever the case is. So if you're new to the Thrive Fantasy app, you download it on your phone, use our promo code T2T. That stands for Toilets to Titles. T2T.
You said that very clearly this week. I love it.
I've gotten better so that I don't get those emails from YouTube kind of threatening some of the other words. but it is T2T as our promo code. Download that promo code. You deposit anywhere between $20 to $50, and they will double your deposit. So
Can't beat that.
Yeah, so it's free money for you to keep betting, so just remember that. And
there you go. There you have it. Remember that. Go deposit some money. Go win some money. Go get some free money.
And then
and
then let us know how you did.
Yes, that's very important. We do want to know if you won. All right. And if you lost, you can let us know, and we can tell you. You can tell us why you lost, and we can tell you whether it's worth continuing betting or if you just stink at it.
Hey, man, sometimes that's important to have somebody that will, lay it on you straight. So that's good.
Cold hard facts. Cold hard facts. All right, dudes and duds, we are running behind. We've been a lot of discussion tonight because it's been so good having Kyle on. So I'm going to try to speed through this, but do know Fusion FFB, all of our show notes will be in there, as well as links to Kyle's podcast. You can go after, I think it's going to release later tonight. I'll get the article submitted. You can see our dudes and duds. You can see our streamers. You can see all that stuff, the podcast link, the YouTube link. So we got you covered. All right. But anyway, dudes for the week. I like Bridgewater versus New Orleans. I think as Teddy is coming off of a tough matchup with the Bears defense, and I expect him to rebound. The Saints defense is letting up an average of 30 points per game, 242 passing yards per game. I like Robbie Anderson this week. I like DJ Moore this week. And always they got those little dump offs out of the backfield. So I think Bridgewater is going to bounce back. I got Kyle Allen versus Dallas. Allen was 31 for 42. He had 42 pass attempts last week, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns versus the Giants. I expect him to top that versus Dallas, all right? I think he's going to have McLaurin there. And then watch, I think Gibson will get into the end zone on a pass play. So I think you're going to have that working for him. So I'm starting Kyle Allen versus Dallas. Tie that right into Gibson. At running back, I'm starting Antonio Gibson versus Dallas. Look at what Kenyon Drake did last week after being below average all season. Dallas made him look like Marshall Faulk. Antonio Gibson's a better player than Kenyon Drake. I think Antonio Gibson will eat this week. James Robinson versus the LA Chargers. Chargers defense is letting up 107 rushing yards a game. Mike Davis and Ronald Jones were 2 of the last 3 running backs to face them, and both put up over 20 fantasy points. Okay, I think James Robinson is a little more talented than both of those guys. I think he's going to eat, but he gets an equal share of the load that those guys got. So he's going to get all the touches. He's going to do all the damage. Start James Robinson this week. Tyler Boyd versus Cleveland. Week 2 against Cleveland, he had 8 receptions, 72 yards, and a touchdown. He hasn't topped 15 points over the last 2 weeks, but I expect him to do it this week. DJ Moore, like I said earlier, versus New Orleans. I expect this game to be a shootout. DJ Moore has topped 93 yards each of the past 2 games, and I think this week he's finally going to top 100. It's going to come versus the Saints. And then finally, Darren Waller versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Coming off of a bye, and Tampa Bay they're pretty stingy against wide receivers and running backs. But their biggest weakness is against tight ends. There's a real shot that the Raiders could be behind, and we'll need to utilize Waller to get things going. And I think Justin threw this one in for me because I was well, Justin, was this the one you threw in for me, bud?
Yeah.
So Justin takes credit for this one. So if you guys start Darren Waller, Justin came up. I couldn't think of a tight end. I was having a brain fart. Football practice actually started this week, and I was prepping for that, and I couldn't even wrap my mind around which tight ends to start. So thank you. Kyle, you have some bonus dudes. So why don't you go through them real quick?
Yeah, I got a quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver for you guys this week. First quarterback, I'm going with Matthew Stafford. Don't overthink this one. I know Stafford has not necessarily been what you guys expected, even if you drafted him as a backup QB, late round QB, QB2 in Superflex this year. He's only had 1 game more than 17 fantasy points. You're expecting a big game last week against the Vikings. It didn't happen, but I think this is going to be the one. Stafford is 21st among quarterbacks in points per game. I think this is one of those turnaround type games. He has the best matchup for quarterbacks going up against the Atlanta Falcons, who have given up 300 yards passing in every single game to the starter, except in 1 game. That starting quarterback was Mitch Trubisky, and him and Nick Foles were combined for over 300 passing yards. So this is super simple. No quarterback has less than 23 fantasy points in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. Matthew Stafford, he's the top 10 QB this week. Plug him in. At running back, coming back off the bye, Justin Jackson. He played on that Monday night game against the Saints, and he he had more touches than Joshua Kelly, 20-12. Kelly's still going to work in there, but Jackson got more rushes. He was more involved in the passing game, and this is going to be, I think, a high-scoring affair between the Chargers and the Jags. So the Jags have been a really bad rush defense for a while now. They've given up 9 total touchdowns to running backs so far this season, and at least double-digit fantasy points to one running back in every single game. So Justin Jackson, he's an RB2 for me this week. I like him in kind of like that Gibson range that Schepps kind of talked about too. And wide receiver, I'm going DJ Chark. 14 targets was awesome. Unfortunately, I don't know about you two, but I don't play in a points per target league. Yeah. So not a great week for DJ Chark in week 6. But I think week 7 he turns it around. I think some of those targets turn into catches, bigger yardage totals. I think Jags are going to be playing from behind in this one. The Chargers have been a better pass defense. That's why I threw him on here, because I do think he's not just a no-brainer start. They started the year off pretty hot, but over the last 3 games, they've given up 2 touchdowns. They'd only given up 1 touchdown until that point. They gave up over 120 yards to Mike Evans a couple weeks ago, then over 120 yards to Emmanuel Sanders in that next game. So I think that Chark is going to get righted here. He's going to be somebody that I'm feeling pretty good about plugging in as my wide receiver too. So Stafford, Jackson, and Chark, those are my dudes.
Love it. Love it. Now for duds. I am sitting Jared Goff versus the Bears. 0 quarterbacks have topped 300 yards, and only 2 have topped 250 versus the Bears this season. In 6 games, the Bears have only let up 4 passing touchdowns. I think Jared Goff is going to have a long day. I do not feel comfortable starting him. Ryan Tannehill versus Pittsburgh. Tannehill is coming off of a huge game, but he's heading to Pittsburgh to face one of the toughest defenses in the league. I expect this to be a low-scoring affair, like I said earlier. The loss of Taylor Lewan may lead to some more pressure that Tanny hasn't been used to. So I think, again, low-scoring game. I say he probably has somewhere around 200 yards, maybe a touchdown, and that's about it. So if I have other options, I am starting them over Ryan Tannehill. Jacobs versus Tampa Bay. This is the second time I put Josh Jacobs on the duds list, and I know one particular person isn't going to be too happy with that, and he is in the Frankenstank League, and I'm going to hear it in the Frankenstank chat, but I am sorry. Aaron Jones was held to 10 carries for 15 yards last week versus a tough Tampa Bay defense. Josh Jacobs is up next, man. He's going to get shut down. Next, I'm sitting James Conner at Tennessee. Since the bye in week 4, Tennessee has not allowed a running back to top 100 yards. Last week, they held David Johnson to 57, and the week prior, they held Yeldon and Singletary to a combined 79. If Conner did more out of the backfield as a receiver, receiving back, I'd feel a little more comfortable. But since he doesn't, he only has 12 receptions on the year. So, maybe he'll have 1 or 2. So if you're in a PPR, 2 for 15, and say 60 yards in the ground, that's not a great day. If I have better options, I am starting them over James Conner. All New England Patriots wide receivers versus San Francisco. When a running back leads the team in reception yards and targets like James White did last year, that's not a good sign. Last week. That is not a good sign. The New England passing attack looked horrible last week, and the San Francisco defense just held Jared Goff to under 200 yards. So I am not feeling comfortable starting any Patriots wide receivers. Amari Cooper at Washington. This, Kyle. Cooper is known for disappearing at times when the going gets tough. And with this being an away game versus a division opponent, with the Cowboys losing like they did last week, I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those games. Call it a hunch, but I think Amari Cooper is worth sitting this week. And then finally, Rob Gronkowski at Oakland. Other than Travis Kelce, tight ends haven't done much versus Oakland this season. Gronk had his highest target total of the season last week, but I expect those targets to be spread out between Evans and Godwin. So, Kyle, who are your bonus duds for the week?
Yeah, I got 3 bonus duds as well. Quarterback, I have Jimmy G on here. I know he came off a nice game. He's still dealing with that injury, as you can tell watching that. He's going up against the New England Patriots, who have still been a really stout pass defense. They kind of look, when you look at where they're at, right, when you're plugging them in your lineup, that little NE is not red, right? They're actually kind of middle of the pack when you look at points on the year, but that's thanks to Russell Wilson dropping 34 on them. So they faced Russell Wilson, they faced Patrick Mahomes. Other than that, they've kept everybody else in check. So if you're like in a super flex league and you have Jimmy G, I'd actually roll with Kyle Allen, as Schepps mentioned him as a dude. Like, I'd roll with him in a much better matchup. So I'm fading Jimmy G this week if I can. At running back, this one's going to seem weird because you start everybody against the Jets, right? I'm going to fade Devin Singletary a little bit. I think he's flex worthy just purely based off the matchup, but man, talking about not taking advantage of the opportunity. We saw Zach Moss come back last week. neither of them did much at all anyway. But Singletary only had 10 carries to Zach Moss's 5. It is a matchup against the Jets, so there could be some opportunity, obviously, with game script going his way. But Singletary has had 78 yards in the past 2 games and only 1 touchdown the entire season. So I'm probably going to try to get away from Singletary if I can. I'm not thinking this is a complete get-right game for him. The Jets have been a little bit better against the run as of late. So Singletary is more of a flex for me this week. I would start guys like Justin Jackson easily over him this week. I'd start Gibson over Singletary if I had those guys in my lineup. And then at wide receiver, these are 2 guys, man, I might not own any player more than I own Brandon Cooks this year, and it's been awesome to see him breaking out, finally getting connected with Watson. And Fuller has been a pleasant surprise to me. He's a guy that I always dog, but, man, I think he stepped up for fantasy owners this year. I'm going to temper expectations for both of those guys, though. This week, they're going up against the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay gives up the 10th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver position. They haven't given up a touchdown since week 3 to a wide receiver. They just shut down Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in that game. Game script there a little bit too. But Green Bay's only given up 5 touchdowns to wide receiver the entire season, and they've also only let wide receivers eclipse 60 yards twice on the year. So, if they're hard to get out of your lineup because they've been so hot. But for me, those guys are flexes this week as opposed to wide receiver 2s.
So sit the entire New England Patriots and Houston wide receiver core. So
there we go.
Just shut them down. Oh, Mike Sarno coming in. Johnny is the man. What's up, Mike? Appreciate you joining. All right, Justin, why don't we go through some of your streamers for the week?
Yeah, because you know me, I'm always living the stream life because I put myself in such rotten situations every week. But last week, I did call the Cousins big game. He ended up being a QB8 overall last week, so that was good for me. We had Joshua from Fusion Fantasy Football on last week, or at Fusion FFB, and he gave you Keelan Cole and Christian Kirk last week, who had 20.3 and 22.6 points last week in PPR. So that's pretty killer. So. Also, Irv Smith was one of my calls that Joshua liked as well. He had 11.5 PPR. The Giants D were top 5. The Washington's D was top 12, and then Joshua also gave you Miami's D that was right around 7th, depending on your league scoring. Some epic fails from last week. Ben Roethlisberger, I really felt like he was going to have a much bigger game. He was a low-end QB2. So probably only good if you streamed him as a QB2, and even then it wasn't great. Tony Pollard, I really thought he was going to get a lot more garbage time. He ended up getting more early down time because of the fumbles and didn't do a whole lot because of the Zeke fumbles and didn't do a whole lot with it. 6 PPR points, but he did have 12 touches. So I kind of feel like, typically Tony Pollard with 12 touches would do a little better than that. But anyway, and then Eric Ebron, 2 catches for 9 yards. That one was really bad. But like I said, I did have some good ones in there, and I'm going to make it up to you guys this week because I've got Gardner Minshew, who is a low-end QB1 right now. He's playing against the Chargers. They give up the 6th most yards to quarterbacks, and I see him having a huge game this week. Justin Herbert, still only owned in about 59% of ESPN leagues, which is insane to me. I don't get that at all. He's slowly starting to blow up. So if he's still available in your league, they're playing Jacksonville this week. So yeah, I picked the 2 quarterbacks going against each other. I think they're going to air it out. I think there's going to be a lot of points. Jacksonville gives up almost as many yards as the Chargers, but they also give up 2 touchdowns per game as well to quarterbacks. So Herbert's going to take advantage of that. I did put Boston Scott on here as a streamer. Unfortunately, again, it's the waiver issue. If you don't get him on waivers tonight, somebody else probably is going to. If you already own him, then yeah, you can, like I said earlier, you can stream him. Just like Kyle said, as a good flex position. I also put Jamal Williams, again, garbage time. When you're trying to stream running backs, it's a little bit more difficult. So you're kind of looking for those kind of opportunities of garbage time. And they're playing the Texans, who have that bad, it's been worse than expected defense back there. But so I do believe that there's going to be plenty of opportunity for Jamal Williams to pick up some garbage time at the end of the game. Now, the big ones, my wide receivers this week. I feel like both of these wide receivers are going to be good streams, and they're both playing for the same team. And that is your Bengals wide receivers, T. Higgins and AJ Green. 38 targets since week 2 for T. Higgins. He has played really well since his 2-touchdown breakout game in week 3 against Philadelphia. And I'm saying that T. Higgins gets a touchdown this week. Now, I'm also saying, though, that A.J. Green gets a touchdown this week. So Joe Burrow was really starting to look for A.J. Green a lot more this week. He had 8 catches for 96 yards. So this is kind of like a big, bold call for me. I don't typically make bold statement calls like this in the middle of the season unless we're doing our board bets and stuff. But maybe it's because I've done 2 shows back-to-back and I've been drinking a lot through both of them. But we're going to say it's a bold call. I'm going to say T. Higgins, A.J. Green both get touchdowns this week. Let's see. Tight ends. We already kind of talked about Anthony. Again, we're going to call him Anthony. Johnny's back up Anthony.
There we go. I like it.
So we're going to hold Anthony if you own Jonnu, just in case he doesn't play. Otherwise, you're probably going to want to try to go after Dalton Schultz. And I know that sounds kind of crazy because he hasn't been doing really well of late, but he did get 5 targets from the other Dalton, Andy Dalton, this week. And I feel like Andy Dalton has to – he can only get better, right? I feel like he's got to come back a little bit with this good matchup against Washington. He's going to lean on that tight end crutch, and I feel like Dalton Schultz will have more opportunities this week to kind of do something for you. And I mostly picked him also because he wasn't a tight end that we haven't already talked about tonight. The defensive teams, my big one for this week for defensive special teams are the Eagles. So if you're going out to get a particular one, they're playing the Giants this week. The Eagles defense has been pretty decent, actually, if you consider how bad their offense is. They've not been put in a lot of good spots to have a lot of good opportunities. But this Giants offense has given up a lot of fantasy points to defenses. So it could be an opportunity for one ugly game for them to get some defensive points. And the other one, of course, is any team that's playing the Jets. This week it happens to be the Bills. And the Bills are not owned in a lot of leagues either because they're not that great of a defense, but they're not that bad either. They're kind of middle of the road. So against the Jets, they should look pretty good. So those are my streamers for the week.
Love it. Love it. All right. Now I'm going to go on to some DFS plays. And again, you guys will see all of this at Fusion FFB in the article that will be titled T2T Week 7 Primer. This is my lineup for DraftKings this week. Quarterback, Rodgers at Houston, 7,000. This is rebound Rodgers. Expect him to light it up. Running back, Kamara versus Carolina at 7,900. He's the fantasy MVP. If you get a chance to put him in your lineup, go ahead. And then I get to pair him with Antonio Gibson versus Dallas for only 5,000. Again, what I said about Kenyon Drake earlier, he had 20 carries, 164 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Start Antonio Gibson everywhere. Wide receiver, I'm stacking Devontae Adams with Rodgers, 7,900. I'm just rebound Rodgers, man. Rebound Adams. At wide receiver 2, Terry McLaurin versus Dallas. So I got 2 Redskins in here. Well, I'm sorry. I got
put $1 in the jar.
McLaurin versus Dallas at 5,800. It's a theme every week. I think you guys know this if you've listened to the show. Start the wide receiver 1 versus Dallas. Start him. Last week, I thought Andy Isabella was going to be the guy to have the monster game, and boy, was I close. I feel like Kyler missed him, by a few inches quite often. I had him in my DFS lineup, and that could have been huge for me. But I know Terry McLaurin is going to ball. And then at wide receiver, my number 3 wide receiver is Tyler Boyd versus Cleveland, 5,400. Again, his best game of the season came at Cleveland, and I expect him to ball. Anthony Fersker versus Pittsburgh at 3,000. This one could affect the whole lineup. If Jonnu is playing, I'd have to change it up. But we're going with the fact that I think Jonnu might sit. I think they might let him rest because they know they need him down the stretch. So start Anthony versus Pittsburgh, 3,000. At my flex, I'm starting James White versus San Francisco at 4,900. We're sitting all the New England Patriot wide receivers, but that doesn't mean you got to sit this running back. He saw the most receptions and the most yards last week, 8 for 65. Now, if he can manage to get into the end zone, that would be huge. And then for defense, Justin already talked about the Eagles. I'm starting the Eagles versus the Giants at 5,100. That can't be correct. I must have wrote that number down wrong. I think it's 3,100. 21 sacks in the year. I expect them to get to Jones early and often, and they're going to cause some turnovers. So that's my DFS lineup. Justin, let's wrap this thing up with some turtle heads.
Right on. Real quick though, Steve, the epic
Uncle Steve.
He put in here. Oh shoot, my bad. I hit the wrong one.
T. Higgins versus Cleveland. Yeah. Is he playing well enough to start over Bobby Trees versus Chicago? Kyle, why don't you answer this one?
Man, I've definitely liked what I've seen out of Higgins. When he scored those two touchdown game, he didn't really have a lot of targets, didn't have a lot of yards to go with it. So you're kind of keeping an eye on him. Obviously, he was a high-end second-round pick, so we know he has the talent, but was the opportunity going to be there? I do think he's playing well enough where this is a serious question. A couple weeks ago we would have been like, no, but the matchup with Robert Woods would definitely have me a little bit, concerned as far as being as confident as I usually would be to start Woods as my wide receiver too. I'm gonna, unfortunately, I hate doing this, but I'm gonna take kind of the out. Like if you're in a position where you think you need a big game, it's T. Higgins. Because I think he has the higher upside. If you want to make sure like, okay, I need my guy to get me 10 points and I don't feel like I could stomach watching Robert Woods ball out on my bench in primetime on Monday night in front of my face, then you just plug in Robert Woods and you live with that decision. So unfortunately, I'm going to ride the fence there. I hate doing it, but I'm going to do that. Sorry.
Hey man, I do that often on Sundays. When people ask me, I'm like, here's the floor play, here's the ceiling play. I'm telling you point blank, and then sometimes it's the best answer. All right, now on to turtle heads.
Yeah, now on to the turtle heads. If I can find, there we go. All right, so my turtle heads for this week. I'm not super excited about the first one. I was kind of trying to crunch some numbers and trying to reach to try to find one. And I came up with Kyle Allen. And then a little bit later, as the day was going and I was doing a little bit more research on the streamers, I slowly started plugging in a few more. But I also don't hate Kyle Allen because of what I found out as I was kind of doing the research. And that is that he's still owned, even in 2 quarterback leagues. He's still owned in I think it was 10 or 12% of all 2 quarterback leagues even. He's still out there, which is kind of odd to me because usually any quarterback that's starting is taken. So, and the only reason he's even intriguing to me is because he's playing Dallas twice, the Giants, Detroit, Cincinnati. Those are his 5 of his next 6 games, and the other one is a bye week. So, so I feel like he should be startable as a QB2 as long as he can continue to maintain that starting job there. So it's just something to consider. But Jerry Jeudy, I'm a little bit more excited about because he has a 20% target share average. That's insane to me to think that he has that because he hasn't really blown up. Like normally a guy has a 20% target share in an offense. He's doing crazy good things. But then you think about it, that offense hasn't really blown up quite yet either as a whole. So he's got Drew Lock back, and Drew Lock didn't play all that good this week, but it was against New England. They have the Chargers, Atlanta, Vegas, Miami, and New Orleans for the second half of the fantasy season coming up. So you should be able to get Jerry Jeudy for pretty cheap. I know he's most likely owned in a lot of leagues, but you should be able to get him for pretty cheap as a throw-in guy for a trade or something and roll with him from there. So I really like Jerry Jeudy's potential to break out moving forward. But I'm also not as big on Patrick as a lot of people as well. So that could play into that a little bit too. Tevin Coleman is I mentioned him a little bit earlier. He's coming back and Mostert just got hurt, so he's going to be out for a while. I like Tevin Coleman's opportunity to become a potential flex option. I'm not saying he's a big turtlehead breakout that's going to do crazy, amazing things. I'm saying if you're hurting at running back and you think that you need more than just a weekly streamer, his opportunity to catch balls from Jimmy G while Jimmy's trying to get over his injury, and this is about turtlehead, so it's about getting the guy before he comes around. So let's say it does take 2 more weeks before he's even healthy and gets out on the field. Whenever he does get healthy, he does get on the field. You had that roster spot available. You have Tevin Coleman. Now you've got a flex guy that you can potentially start for a few weeks during a nice little stretch until Mostert gets back. But the last one, the one that I'm most happiest about, is Preston Williams. And I didn't even write down any notes here because I felt this way about Preston Williams all offseason. And I don't know if you remember, John, but I was really low on him in our preseason ranks because of that knee injury. I'm very adamant about saying that it takes longer than what they approved for an ACL injury. And he got that ACL injury late in the season last year, Preston Williams did. So a lot of people were drafting him high, but now all of a sudden he's available in like 50% of ESPN leagues. There's a reason for that, because they drafted him too high and they're disappointed with his performance. But if you watch his games, and I've watched every single one of the Dolphins games because I've been watching for Preston Williams, waiting for this moment. And this last week, and even a little bit the previous week, but this last week, he's finally making cuts that he made before. He's finally getting off the line of scrimmage a lot faster like he did last year before his injury. I mean, he's finally playing to his potential. And I wrote all this down even knowing that he's going to have a quarterback change now with Tua, because, again, I think Tua is a little bit more accurate, and I think that he's going to be able to move the ball a little bit more efficiently, maybe not as explosively. But I think that plays into the receivers and even Gesicki as well. You might be able to get Gesicki really cheap right now too, and use him as a kind of another low level turtle head. But mainly Preston Williams, just because we've seen how good he can be, and now that I feel like he's almost completely over that injury, he's kind of back. He's ready to go. I'm ready to go all in on Preston Williams and try to pick him up where I can.
All right. Well,
I got a few if you want me to throw them at you real quick.
Go ahead.
For one, I like the call earlier about the stream on Justin Herbert. This is a guy that you're going to be able to play over multiple weeks coming off this bye. Jacksonville this week at Denver isn't the best matchup, but then after that, the Raiders, the Dolphins, the Jets. This is 5 weeks. 4 out of 5, you're going to be able to plug him and play. Another guy that you could get in super flex leagues, I think you could take advantage of the fact that he's got a tough matchup this week. Derek Carr. He's only 26% owned. He has 20 or more fantasy points in 3 of his last 4. This dude's schedule is legit. The whole rest of the way, he has one tough matchup against the Colts. Besides that, listen to this. The Browns, the Chargers, the Broncos, the Chiefs, the Falcons, cha-ching, the Jets, cha-ching, the Colts, Chargers, and then Miami. I mean, I think this is a guy that he's going to be a solid QB2 for you. Go pay him right now. He's already had his bye week. If you're in a super flex league, you got 2 kind of middling quarterbacks there. Package them both, ship them off to the guy that has the car owner. You don't need a third quarterback anymore. Just put your Derek Carr in your QB2 spot. And then we'll go super, super deep right now. I think this guy's only owned in like 2% of Yahoo leagues right now. If you're in a super deep league, sometimes when you're looking at these waiver wires, even the waiver wire sniping thing that I do on Saturday, like some of these guys are just owned, right? We play in a lot of deeper leagues. Denzel Mims. This is a guy that he's practiced last week for the first time. He does a lot of things that they don't have, like in Jamison Crowder, right? I think it's a tough offense. I get it. But if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel there, I'd go add Denzel Mims right now and see if you catch that next rookie wide receiver breakout.
All right, I love it. Denzel Mims, man. He was a hot name around the Senior Bowl, so be exciting to see him break out, because there were a lot of things I liked about him that I also liked about Van Jefferson, so maybe we'll see a breakout from him as well. But both those guys, if you can run routes, you can get open, and if you can hold on to the ball when it gets to you, those are things that quarterbacks love, and those are things that help you produce early and often. So it could be coming. So do want to remind everybody, please hit the like button on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, throw us a 5-star review. Write some nice, kind words about us. That would be very, very appreciated. Kyle, I got some nice, kind words to say about you, man. It's been very fun having you. I respect you, and I respect the work you put in to your podcast, to your articles, and you're definitely an influence to me. I can definitely say that, man. So it's been great having you.
Dude, this was a ton of fun. This is just, it kind of felt like old times. Shep's doing a pod with you. Justin, it was really nice meeting you finally in person after being in the chat and things. But guys, honestly, I just want to say I really do appreciate it. Sorry, I probably caused you guys to go long. I want to get going, man. It just reminiscing and things was a ton of fun as well. But this was a ton of fun, so I appreciate you guys.
We go about an hour 10.
All right, we'll see. Yeah,
try to go an hour, so maybe we're about 3 minutes past, so it's really not bad. But I do want everybody to know you can find Kyle on Twitter at KyleFF. Fellas, I'm going to throw his Twitter handle in that article, FusionFFB.com. You could find his podcast on Twitter at FFSmackdownPod. We'll be sharing links to his podcast, but if you follow those, you'll be able to find them. And I'm sure if you're on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, whatever, you could throw that in there. You could look it up. But again, Kyle, send that to me as soon as you can. Getting these show notes set up right now so I could post this and then everybody can see it. Again, you can find the show on Twitter at Toilets to Titles. You can find me on Twitter at eCoachSchepps. Nate, who was not here tonight, at Nate_Dirt19. And then Justin right next to me at JustinFF_. Justin, what do you have to say, my friend?
I want to say I appreciate you, Kyle. Thank you very much. You probably have a fan for life now, but everybody just keep loving each other.
Keep loving each other. We'll see you all next week.